I'm going to start with a cautionary tale. The way that Burgin Associates works with most of its clients in the first place is we do what we call a diagnostic. This is a very simple visit to a client's business to understand the way they go about pricing. And a few years back now, I was invited to do one of these. On with this slightly interesting information, I went back through the organization, I tracked down the marketing manager, who seemed to be, as they often are, the guy who can sort of get his hands on the data, and we did some rough and dirty analysis. And I went back to the chief executive about sort of 5:15 in the afternoon, and I said, I've got some good news and some bad news. I think he was a little taken aback. That's not usually the way that consultants report. But anyway, he said, I suppose you better give me the bad news first. And I said, well, I've done a bit of rough and dirty analysis. And between me and the marketing manager, we reckon about 83% of your business by value is going out on special pricing request. His little mouth dropped open, bless him. And when he regained his composure and wiped away a tear, he said, well, you better give me the good news. I said, the good news is your competitor is not driving the market price down. He said, how do you figure that? I said, it's you. The behavioral psychologists would call cognitive biases. Now, cognitive biases is a term that basically means you don't really have the right view of the world. Your view of the world is biased by the information that comes to you. And some of them are actually quite useful to exploit in pricing. But the biggest single one is the view that you have of your price in the market. Let me explain. Put very simply, imagine if you were positioned bang in the middle of your marketplace in terms of price. You might reasonably expect that 50% of the available market would think, actually, they're a bit expensive, and 50% of the available marketplace, well, actually, they're cheaper than I thought they would be. I'd have paid a bit more. You have to ask yourself this question: which of these two halves of your marketplace is going to give you unsolicited feedback on your price? These guys are going to say you're too expensive. What are these guys going to do? They're going to keep stum. In fact, worse than that, some of them are going to tell you you're too expensive because they want another 5% discount. So, along with virtually every other business in the world, the perception you have of your price level is inaccurate because of a cognitive bias. It's a bit like the Queen thinks the world smells of paint. First on my list is no, I can't afford it. The metaphor here is the bloke on 20 grand a year who goes into a Ferrari showroom. He's an avid watcher of Top Gear, and he thinks, I'll have one of those, but he wasn't really paying attention when Jeremy told him exactly how much they cost. He's not really a customer, is he? There's only really 3 ways I can think of making this guy a customer. You can fix him up with a prancing horse key ring. You can do him a finance deal on a Ferrari that involves him signing away not only his house, but his mother's house. Or you can take him out the back to your second-hand car lot and fix him up with a Ford Fiesta on an O2 plate that you've painted red and stuck a badge on. Let me get on to the 2 tricky ones. Fourth kind of no. No, I'm going to try and get a discount. I suspect, like me, there's a lot of people in the room who are the fourth kind of no. Experience will have told you, if you've been in business for a while, if you've got a salesman sat across the desk from you and you ask him for a discount, there's a very good chance he's going to give you one. There's lots of good reasons why salespeople do that. You can always tell a salesperson who's going to give away this kind of discount to the fourth kind of no, because he will come to you as the boss and say, I actually need a bit of flexibility on discount. I need to be able to give away 5% to close the deal. No, you don't. What this person is saying is, I like you, I like your company, I like your product, I'm going to buy it from you, but I'm not going to tell you that until I've asked you if you're going to give me a discount. Why? Because I want some of your profit so I can keep it as my profit. They're trying it on. There's a very good reason why salespeople give in to the fourth kind of no, particularly in an industry like yours, where you tend to pay people pretty big commissions. It's a binary decision, isn't it? You're sitting there in front of the customer, and the customer says, oh, I think you need to do something on your price. And he's got a choice. He can either forego that big lump of commission and stand his ground, or he can forego a little bit of his commission and do the deal. So maybe there's an incentive in the way that you incentivize your salespeople that push them to give way to the fourth kind of no. We have a very simple policy for the fourth kind of no. We call it pricing from Mount Sinai. Those of you who are biblical scholars will remember that Moses did not come down from Mount Sinai, having had a chat with God, with the Ten Commandments written in light pencil on the back of a packet of Benson and Hedges, and say to the people of Israel, I've got a few ideas about some laws, thought we might chat them around. No, carved in stone. We used to say a few years ago that the modern equivalent of carved in stone was laminated in plastic. The way to convince a customer that you're not going to negotiate with them is sound like a business that's not going to negotiate. Nobody goes to a second-hand car dealer and pays a sticker price, unless you're particularly stupid. But who here, and someone's going to put their hand up, aren't they? Who here goes to Tesco's and starts haggling with a lady on the till? Be the kind of business, and it's in your tone, it's the price is, the cost for doing this will be a degree of certainty. Then we come on to the fifth kind of no. The fifth kind of no is no, I never pay the asking price. Most of us have come across one of these guys at some point in the past. Fifth kind of no, it's a matter of personal pride, that he never pays the asking price. And the definition of the fifth kind of no is this is someone who will cut his nose off to spite his face. He cannot, even if he spots value in what you do, he cannot recognize it. He cannot let you know that you're offering value for money. Why? Because he wants to keep his powder dry for the next negotiation. They tend to buy cheaply, but they seldom buy well. If you have the option, quite frankly, I wouldn't do business with them. We don't. Anybody tries to nickel and dime a pricing consultant, it's a bit stupid, isn't it? Very definition of a hiding enough. Now, a customer will pay for an awful lot of things, some of which they won't admit to. You can't list these things on the invoice, but I promise you, and most of you will know this, that your customers will pay for these things. Here's a little list for you. Covering the backside, making their life easy, keeping their boss quiet, looking good in front of their peers, silencing critics, making up for their intellectual shortcomings. Reading things they're too lazy to read, that's a good one. Giving them a feeling of importance, getting the boring stuff off their desk, finishing stuff when they cannot see the end in sight, tackling what to them seems insurmountable, and taking away their fear of getting fired. People in business-to-business sales buy defensively. At several points in the decision-making process, they will say to themselves, what will other people think about the way I'm making this decision? And it doesn't matter whether you're the lowliest person in the organization or the chief executive, you will think that. So far, what we've talked about is price level. How high, how low, just right. I want to introduce the subject of price structure now, because this is where the fun bit comes. I'm going to tell you a story. One of our clients manufactures aircraft tires. And now there are only 4 aircraft tires of any aircraft tire manufacturers of any particular note in the world. Our client is one of them. And they told me this story, and it's a fabulous story, so I keep on repeating it. Incidentally, is anybody, half term's coming up, is anybody flying off on a skiing holiday or getting some winter sun? You may want to plug your ears at this point in time. The slightly scary thing about aircraft tires that I didn't know till I talked to this company is that they get remolded about 4 or 5 times before they throw the carcass away. The way people used to price aircraft tires is you paid sort of X for a brand new tire and about 80% of X for the first remold and 73% of X for the second remold and so on and so forth. And if you were an airline buying aircraft tires, you had to decide whether you were buying brand new tires, first remold, second remold, whatever. And as a consequence, you had to hire a tire nerd to negotiate with the tire company. And then one of these 4 aircraft tire companies came out with a new pricing methodology. And what they did is what we in the pricing world called a denominator shift. In other words, the price per watt changed. Now, I presume, I don't know the facts, but I presume that this particular tire company tested it on some sort of little Midwestern airline, and they did their numbers and everything else. But they went out to the marketplace and they said, you know, you usually pay per tire, but we're going to give you the option now of paying per landing. Now, the wonderful thing about per landing is, incidentally, the number of landings a commercial aircraft makes is a matter of public record. You sort of can't fudge the figures. But the first thing about it is, all of a sudden, you don't need the tire nerd. You've de-risked the purchase for the client. But as an aircraft tyre company, you haven't taken on a commensurate amount of risk. Why? Because the airline might be operating, 4 or 5 jumbo jets, but you're providing tyres for hundreds of jumbo jets. And you're in the tyre business, so who knows more about tyre wear, them or you? So their reduction in risk is not commensurate with your uplift in risk. Incidentally, if you're going to offer a pricing structure like this, you don't offer it to the tyre nerd, because you've just made him redundant. You offer it to the tyre nerd's boss, or better still, the tyre nerd's boss's boss. But that's only part of the story. The other wonderful thing about per landing is, if you stop and think about it, per landing is one of the accounting heartbeats of an airline. Lots of their costs are per landing. The landing fee, the pushback, the cleaning the toilets, marshalling the passengers, the baggage handling, all of that sort of stuff is per landing. So instead of having to sort of do their margin calculations on their ticket prices by saying, has this particular aircraft got second or third remold tyres on it, they've got a flat cost per landing. They loved it. So changing the structure is a great way to find a competitive advantage without even changing the product. Next on the list, retainer. The real value of a retainer is that it takes away the awkwardness of a commercial discussion from the relationship and parks it up front. So in other words, clients will, without this kind of pricing mechanism in place, the hand will hover over the phone thinking, shall I pick it up? Will the meter be running? How much is this call going to cost? If you can park all that by saying, call us anytime you like, put some nice boundaries around it. If you keep us on the phone for 3 hours, we're going to charge you, or whatever. But it takes the commercial discussion and sorts it so that you can get on with developing the relationship with the client and helping them on the way. The key thing to look at here is the balance of risk. So you look at the client's risk and the provider's risk. Time-based, unless the client locks down the total cost of the project, all the risk is with the client. Also, it doesn't tell him anything about the value of the resource he's getting.